Welcome everyone. I am NuclrarDeath, aka NuclrarDeath, as you can see on the screen here, thanks to my typo when making an account for the game. In this video, I am going to be analyzing the quarterfinal of the official Phobies tournament that I played against Potenzia2, aka Keine, aka John Sentinel, aka I don't know how many other names he's had on the Discord. He was nice enough to recreate this game because the replay broke when we played it. So we just finished recreating it, and I'm going to go through a pretty deep analysis, much more than this cute game with monsters demands. But I'm going to have a fun time going over it. If you are interested in watching it, or if you're interested in seeing more, whether my games or your games or other top players, please let me know. This is also my first video, so if you have suggestions about, video setup or microphone setup, or even, anything else, I'd love to know. I am also going to be doing this in one take, so please forgive me for any misspeakings or other errors that occur. So let's get into it. This map is called Phobos. This map is my favorite map for a few reasons. Number one, I really like playing Billy on this map, and Billy is pretty clearly my favorite phobia. I like to play it when I can. But I also just really like how the map plays. I really like the central stim. I like how it's a fight for control of the center, and once you do control the center, you can really transition that into either a heart shot, like a heart rush, or you can bring out like a queen, like a Kira, to win the game. I just really like how this map plays, and there's lots of tactics that occur in the middle. And the key really is controlling these 7 tiles in the middle. Once you control these tiles, you get to set up a little bit more aggressively. So you can maybe set up your Phobies in those spots, or maybe even a little bit more aggressively in those spots. Then you really get to use the stim to your advantage. So if I have my Phobies in those areas, it's very hard for my opponent to have Phobies in these areas because I can move forward and hit them using the stim. And that stim is really nice. But it is still possible to assail an opponent when they're set up this way. It's just, it takes some thought. So I really do like this map. The way I tend to play it, as we'll see, is with what I call a Billy buffer comp. So I like to start with lots of cheap, fast Phobies to get a little bit of control and a little bit of a grasp on the center before I bring out buffers and Billy. So that's Gonzo Bonzo, that's Cupcake, that's Billy, and then other Phobies that are very good with buffers. So Radiator, AoE Phobies like Ginsting or Hermetic Ginsting or Hercules or others. I like this particular combination because I like the HP that Keine and Tickles get, particularly in capturing these 3 panic points. Keine in particular, I don't use very much, but this map I do really like it. So for example, I could put a Keine here, or I could put a Keine here. And it's pretty difficult. Like, the stim adds a lot of damage to just the 1 keys and other Phobies cheap Phobies that people can summon. So the Canine is actually pretty nice to be a meat shield. Same with the Tickles. The Sokkasin is a nice way to round out this comp, because the Sokkasin for 1 key is a huge threat to non-mechanical Phobies. It's pretty easy to kill, so it's got low HP. You can see that here, it's got only 430 HP. But that poison is extremely effective, and if that means that my opponent has to run a Muffin Top, they've got to run a Phobie back, they have to use a pretty powerful Phobie, and then my poison is more effective in the future. Like, if I have a Sokkasin here, or if I have a Sokkasin here, now all of a sudden I'm threatening areas that are pretty deep into their position. And it's all for 1 key, so I really, really like using Sokkasin here. We'll see the response from Potenzia is, in my opinion, quite strong. He uses 3 1 keys and a Tooth Fairy. We'll see this here. So we see the response here. This is an extremely aggressive move. It's splitting the 6 keys into 4 different phobies, which means a lot of action economy. It also means it's very hard to kill because it's so many different phobies to hit. And it offers like a pretty strong grasp on hitting the center, either with the Tooth Fairy or stepping up with the Tickles or the Electric Cat. And the Cowbell even has a shot here. So this is a good, like a very aggressive, pretty good response. And everything I knew about Potenzia going into this game was that he is an aggressive player, and we'll see that later too. So typically the way I like to play this map is I like to run Radiator here. So we'll see, I don't do that here, but I like to run, usually I like to play, you know, put a Radiator here on this turn, maybe a 1 key here, maybe put the K9 here or here, and really sort of fight for the control in the middle. And I find Radiator is excellent at that, because when it's angry, it now threatens stepping onto the stem, being buffed, and then hitting twice because of its extra passive effect. And it hits everything around it, all of these tiles, for that buffed amount. And it's usually pretty good at locking down control when I can summon something else, maybe a Gonzo Bonzo next turn, whatever it might be. But I actually found in this, the Tooth Fairy puts in work. So for example, if I use Radiator, let's say I set up like this, Radiator goes here, maybe another 1 key goes here, maybe I have K9 or Tickles and Sokkasen, something like this. Potenzia can actually just put the Tooth Fairy here, hit the K9, put the Electric Cat here, hit the K9, and the Tickles here and hit the K9. That K9 is now dead. Even though I can kill the Tooth Fairy, it's not really a threat, because all that Potenzia has to do is put anything here that's going to be able to kill my Radiator, because the Radiator is going to be the one that last hits that Tooth Fairy. Because it does damage at the very end of the turn for its final effect. That means that the Radiator will get pulled here. So if Keen or Potenzia puts an AWOL here, or a Cassowary here, that's a lot of damage onto the Radiator. You can even put a Ray Chargels here. Like, these are all options to do massive damage and actually get just a very positive trade. So I actually found Radiator was not that useful this turn. I had to find something else. And we'll see what I did here. So, a couple intricacies about this position in particular. I placed the Sokkasen forward here and the K9 forward here. These two can both be killed, just not simultaneously. We talked about the K9 before. The K9 can be killed if the Tickles or Electric Cat goes here and hits. And the Cowbell goes here, or another 1 key goes here and hits. And then the Tooth Fairy goes here or here or here. I figured that's fine, because I'm just going to kill whatever's in the middle with 2 Ginsting shots and then a Tickle shot or a Sokkasen shot, and then Boom gets to go in the middle and just explode and kill everything. We'll find here that Boom is... I thought I used it pretty well this game, but Potenzia really used Boom to extremely well, extremely good effect. It's particularly effective if you can get it onto the stem and threaten an explosion. Especially because then it leaves the stem and something else can get on the stem and then use the explosion. The other threat here is to kill the Sokkasen, right? That requires an Electric Cat here, and then a Tooth Fairy hit. So if Tooth Fairy goes here, my Ginsting gets to 2-tap it, something else gets to hit it, I'm gonna be fine. That can't be a good move for him. If Tooth Fairy goes here, likewise, we just talked about, the Boom's gonna get on the stem and explode. which just kills the Tooth Fairy in one shot. So that leaves the final area for the Tooth Fairy, which is right here. I figured I don't think this is good for him, because I think I can just hit once, or maybe even move the Canine here and hit the Electrocat, which is going to kill it. Then Boom can move over here, and then Ginsting can move up, and then we get the Tooth Fairy that way, and that seems like a positive trade for me. And I didn't really think aggression was that possible in this position, which is great for me, because now that my Sockison is so far forward, I'm actually threatening to poison anything that goes here, or to get up forward and poison anything here, and I thought my position was actually quite good right now. But Keen surprised me here with he went for it. He just went for the aggression, and it turned out to be a lot better of a move than I previously thought it would be. Here he backs it up with a Ginsting and a Batula. And both of these Phobies are a good choice as backup. So I'm pausing it here because I really have two ways to play this turn. The first is the one I described earlier, which is kill the cat, bring the Boom over, explode, and then bring the Canine over and get the last hit. So that kills the Tooth Fairy. I can probably get the Electrocat and the Tickles, and I'll explore that in a little bit. The other way to do it is to kill the Tickles, get the Boom onto the booster, and kill these two 1-keys as well. I can't really back off. I need to be fighting this if he's stepping that far forward. So, it's interesting to note. Let's take a look at killing the Tooth Fairy, because this is what my original plan was, and in fact, if I can pull that off, then I'm in great shape. That would mean the only way to do that is to hit this with, ideally with an AoE, so that I can hit the Tickles, chip the Tickles a bit as well. The chip on the Tooth Fairy does not matter. Then hit it again with Ginsting, then Boom moves over, gets the explosion, and then Canine moves over and hits the Tooth Fairy. Tooth Fairy's dimensional damage is going to kill the Canine, so both of these are going to die. However, the Boom damage and the AoE from Ginsting are going to leave Tooth Fairy very low, and my own Tickles very low, and my own Tickles can complete that kill. I'm laughing because this is such a silly game, and it's hilarious that it can be taken so seriously. But that results in a dead Tickles, a dead Electrocat, a dead Tooth Fairy. It also results in a dead Boom, a dead Canine, and my Tickles is here. I really looked at ways of backing this up. I really don't want to give him this area, right? Because that area is close to my heart, and Potenzia is a very aggressive player. I want to be able to stop that before that starts. But he actually has more threat here than I expected. So let's say, for example, I put a Tooth Fairy here and a Cupcake here to support this aggression. He actually has a play where Batula can come forward here and hit. Ginsting can come forward here and hit, killing the Tooth Fairy, or the Tickles. Then Cowbell can actually step onto this point and hit. So all told, let's just redraw this, and I will let's actually go back so that the picture is not so dark. Yes, let's redraw that. So that's dead, that's dead, that's dead, that's dead, that's dead, that's dead. We have a Cowbell, a Ginsting, a Batula, and let's say he supports it with, I don't know, like a Daisy and a 1-key. I have a Tooth Fairy that's been chipped, a Ginsting, and a Cupcake. I really don't like this position. He's got a lot of control in the center. The Ginsting can step up and do some damage and wreak some havoc. This is not good for me. I don't really have a response. So it turns out that this push into killing the Sokkasin, I can't get the Tooth Fairy back, which is not good for me. I explored some other options here. Like I explored what happens if I kill the Tooth Fairy and maybe I bring out my own Daisy, you know, 1 key or something like that. And nothing really stood out as good. So I went to my other option, which in this case, we'll see. Note here, I'm actually getting some chip onto the Tooth Fairy with that Ginsting AoE shot. So here I do summon Radiator, and I'll explain that in a second. So the subtleties here. Keine can be killed. I need to make sure that whatever comes forward here, this Ginsting, if it wants to kill, we need to be able to kill that back. So Radiator, again, can just step onto the stim and actually kill by itself, which is good. I also brought out the Radiator now because this Tooth Fairy has been chipped, and now a single Ginsting on the stim kills. Or not a Ginsting and a Radiator both kill. And I thought that was actually quite valuable. In hindsight, maybe I didn't need to use the 1 key. The 1 key isn't doing that much other than like threatening to kill the Batula and retake the point if he puts his Batula on this point. I also figured it's a good time now to collect this panic point here, go up 3-0, pile on some heart pressure, and bring in that slow control that eventually I can use toward heart pressure toward the end of the game. And I really think, like, the Radiator is about to be angry. He's not going to be able to push into this. So I actually was pretty happy with this turn. And we'll note too, Keine served its function. When Keine was here, it did not die. It was able to get a hit that killed the Tickles, and then it was able to fall off and control a little bit of space. All of that, I'm quite happy with the way Keine performed here, although it will become a liability later. Potenzia responds with a turn here that I also think was extremely strong. The first thing to note, I was looking into Cassowary and Boom in my analysis of this position, and I made a pretty silly miscalculation where I was like, oh, if he does something like this, Ginsting can just step onto the stim, hit, and then the AoE will actually kill the Boom. But I don't have AoE available, which was certainly a miscalculation on my part. And even though that's only 3 keys and you might get 4 back, like I can easily support this with a Radiator and then bring my Razormouth in and bring my Canine in, and I think I should be able to support that push. But I can't really push into this, and this is actually extremely strong because, as I was mentioning earlier, being able to use the stim multiple times is very effective. So this Cassowary can step onto the stim. Currently, it's threatening to hit one of these guys for 725 damage, and then he can put his Ginsting, and he can even buff it if he wants to hit again. Not only that, he then supports it with his Boom, so if I come back in, the Boom can get in and explode. So this is an extremely powerful move from Potenzia here. And I can't shove in, and my Radiator is about to become calm, which means it does not control as much space. So this is actually not very good for me, contrary to what I was thinking at the end of last turn. And in particular, we'll notice here, this Batula is pretty good because especially these 2-dimensional units into my Radiator. Because if my Radiator ever gets pulled, he just kills it. So I was, at this point, I was not happy with my position. And we can see what I did here. here, I figured it's probably not good to have both of my two powerful Phobies up top, because that sort of leaves an avenue to the west, right near my heart. Again, I really want to make sure Potenzia can't get in there. It's also good for me if I have like sort of two avenues to get into the center. So I had to make sure I double checked. He can't really get in and attack the K9 here, especially because I have this little trick where I can summon a Gravedigger, destroy this block, Cupcake can get in, and then we get the buff on the Ginsting. I was thinking about what to support, like with the Radiator and the Razormouth. Should they swap? I ended up deciding that the Razormouth was the way to go, that I didn't need the extra 4 key, and especially if they're like a dimensional somewhere, the Razormouth might be more useful to get in there. And you'll see actually both of us are using Cupcake, and Cupcake is so good at denying a push. You know, I really wish it were one movement, for example, so that you couldn't do this crazy play, like get into the combat immediately. But alas, we both use it extremely effectively. See here another very forward and aggressive placement from Potenzia, but this one is actually pretty controlled. It's not just an all-out dive, which is extremely, you know, this is another very good move. That Batula is going to have to die. It's too far forward. I need to kill that. But that leaves an extra spot open for Potenzia. He also has this Cupcake, which can sacrifice itself, and the Boom, which can sacrifice itself. So he's not worried about summoning more Phobies. We're running out of slots. This Noxious summon is also a big threat. So my K9 has 315, I think, HP. It might be 325. Yeah, 325. So it doesn't die to one AoE from Noxious or one AoE from Ginsting, but it dies to those together. Or it dies to a Cupcake plus either one of them. So my K9 is a liability right now. This is what I was talking about earlier. It's taken a lot of damage. And he is really threatening with like all of these Phobies to just get in on this side, and that's going to be hard for me to defend. So I can't really shove. This turn is entirely just a turn for me to set up. So I have to decide what's going to kill the Batula. In this case for me, it's actually not so hard of a decision. It's a pretty easy decision. It's definitely the K9. It's got no HP left. It served its purpose. Let's get it out of there. And we can summon something else. Here, I do get my Billy. I saved up last turn, and I think, because Radiator is going to be angry at the end of my next turn, I can set up and my goal here is to try and build a position that I can really jump in next turn. There are some subtleties too that I'll talk about as well. So I sacrificed the K9. The Billy can't die here either. So the only thing that can die, which I made sure to calculate through, was the Ginsting. And I'll talk about that in just a second. I did play around with where Radiator and Billy should go. I thought Billy is particularly useful out here because I want to be able to like really put a threat on all of these squares here. So if anything goes there and he plays controlled, I just chip it. So that's slowly going to gain some space for me. And Radiator can kind of stay far away, actually. It can still get in and do that extra damage if I needed to. Note as well the Cupcake buff on either one of these Phobies, and even the Ginsting here, provides a lot of a huge like dive threat that I can use to get in. This is where it gets complicated though, because I know that I need to look at what happens if he goes for the ginsting. So the cassowary can jump here and leap and hit. The ginsting can follow here and hit. He's got to deal with this canine, but the noxious can just come here and kill that canine. And then he can heal his tooth fairy with his cupcake, put the tooth fairy here and hit. All of that I need to make sure I can handle. And I thought for a good while about this, and I figured I'm not sure what he's going to summon to support, but I think what I do have is a Razormouth stepping here, a Snowball and Jar Cannon. Not a Snowball and Jar Cannon. A Razormouth steps here, hits once. Radiator steps up here, gets buffed by Cupcake. So the Radiator is going to hit the Tooth Fairy and get pulled, so that its passive effect is now going to deal 675 damage to both of those Phobies, which is very good for me. Then, the Billy gets to run here, hit the Ginsting once, hit the Cassowary once. My Tickles gets to hit the Ginsting twice. My Gravedigger gets to go here, open that, Snowball comes and hits the Cassowary. So that's a lot of stuff going on, but I do get the Tooth Fairy, the Ginsting, and the Cassowary. And I looked at several options for what he could summon. I thought about a Finnegan, I thought about some other stuff, and I figured, okay, when the dust settles, I'm gonna have a Radiator here. I'm gonna have a Billy here, Razormouth, Tickles, Snowball, Gravedigger. My Cupcake and Ginsting are gonna be dead. He's gonna have a Noxious, he's gonna have some support around here, and he's gonna have a Boom somewhere. I thought, I gave this several sort of concrete lines calculating, and I thought, okay, he's probably gonna get the Radiator and the Razormouth, and he's probably even gonna be able to poison my Billy too. But that's okay, because then my Billy gets 2 taps back, then gets to back up, get healed by a Muffin Top, and all told, I will have lost, I believe, 11 or 12 keys to the same amount, 11 or 12 keys for Potenzia, but he will have used his Noxious ability. And his Noxious is going to be quite chipped, whereas my Billy is going to have been healed, and my Tickles is still around, and I actually think I'm doing okay. All of that calculation went into that turn, because if that didn't work, I thought, okay, I could just put my Ginsting back, or I could put my Tickles here. But I figured, no, actually that push does not work for him. And once again, I missed the summons that Potenzia had here. He played aggressively, and this was a fantastic turn. You see all this happening. Everything that I had calculated before. The thing that I missed was really a combination. So what I missed here was the combination of Finnegan and Boom, and particularly this Boom placement here. Because remember what we were calculating earlier, Billy ended up here, and Radiator ended up here, and Razormouth ended up here. But what he has now is Noxious can use its ability and run. Finnegan can run here and then push the Radiator off, and then Boom gets in. So Boom actually gets to hit the Billy. And this is where Billy's nerfs to its HP actually matter, because that Boom does 550. Murder One can get on the spa and do 750. That actually just outright kills Billy. So that turns out to be really bad. I can't lose all of my, high power Phobies in the middle there. So I saw this turn and I was pretty scared. So I started looking for other options. One enticing option actually was, hold up, this Boom is really important. Let's just kill it. Let's put Radiator down here. So I can move it here, move it here. It doesn't even need to be buffed, which is actually really nice. So then, I'm just letting it play so we get to see the top of the screen a little bit. Here we are. Okay. So Radiator can start by moving over here. Snowball can come here, and Jar Cannon, and each take a pot shot at this Tooth Fairy. Razormouth can come here and hit. That's going to kill the Tooth Fairy outright. So Razormouth actually slides over. That means Cupcake is free to buff the Billy, which can then move over, hit, and hit. That together does, I believe, 1200 damage, and the Radiator's 375 confirms the kill on Noxious. It also kills the Boom. That play at first looks kind of decent, right? Because we have a Billy here, we've killed the Tooth Fairy, we've killed the Noxious, we've killed the Boom. And the Razormouth ends up here. The problem is I do have a Snowball and Jar out, and they're not going to be useful for the rest of this fight. But the real problem is that he can actually get the Billy here. So my Razormouth will have taken dimensional damage and fire damage. So one Ginsting shot here, the AoE kills it. So another Ginsting shot, he uses his non-AoE to hit that. Cassowary can come here and hit. That's already 1150 damage or so, so all he's got to do is just hit once with a Murdering, and it's dead. Then Finnegan can come here. Reminder, Radiator is here. And shove. So the Radiator, again, it's calm here, so it's not actually that useful. And all of my fighting ability is just gutted. So the Billy can't go there. I thought about, okay, I can do the same exact play where Radiator and Razormouth and Snowball and Jar Cannon and Billy can go here, get buffed, and do the same thing. But in that case, he has the same option to kill the Billy. It's just a little bit like Ginsting ends up on the stem here and hits, Finnegan ends up over here and hits, and Murdering ends up over here and hits. And again, I don't have, I can either fight with this Radiator, but it's going to die afterward, and these guys are not a help. So, and then the Cassowary can either hit that, or it can go here and hit the Razormouth. So that doesn't work either. So it turns out just like fighting is extremely bad. I won't, go through all the variations I looked at. I looked at ignoring the Cassowary. I looked at all these things. But nothing really seemed to work. So I had to take a step back here and say, okay, let's just get the kills I can and stay back. So the easy kills are Tooth Fairy, right? So how do I get that? Well, I can take a couple Billy shots, I can hit with Razormouth, and we'll see what I actually was able to find here. I thought, well, Radiator can actually come around to the east and get this last shot on the Cassowary. And that's actually extremely important. I was not aware of this going into this turn, but it says something about defense, that you have options at your disposal. And this is why offense is really hard. It's why what Potenzia does is extremely hard. So I end up with this play. Some subtleties here. I decided I could have killed that Cassowary with my Tickles that was here. I could have hit it. I think I had to hit it twice. I didn't really want to do that because this is just a free Tickles back. And I figured it's better to take a pot shot at the Ginsting, chip it down a little bit, and then make him work to kill that Tickles. Because for example, the Tickles here, it does a good job of zoning away any Boom that tries to come through the bottom. The other thing that I am giving him here, which is I did see and I was aware of, and you're about to see it happen too. The Noxious can come here and hit, and that's going to do a lot of poison, and I'll get to that in a second. But the reason I was thinking about setting up this way in the first place was there are actually several lines here where being able to use a cupcake on my radiator is very useful, because there are several lines where Potenzia might try and bring his Phobies around kind of southeast, and that protection is very good for me. He ends up poisoning, and I'll go through my logic for this. He does pretty much exactly what I would have expected in these calculations. The only thing I wasn't sure was what he would use to support. And this creep, which I'll talk about later, was another excellent summon, which, you know, I hadn't considered. So, first things first. He's poisoned a lot of my team here. However, when you really stop to think about it, Cupcake's going to sacrifice itself anyway to heal one of these two. Noxious also does not kill the Gravedigger if it leeches once. The Gravedigger does survive. It's gonna have to take more damage to kill. And we're right by my spawn, so whichever one of these doesn't get healed can get healed by Muffin Top. So really, what I'm banking on is it's really a Noxious poison, so Noxious is gonna die, for the Cupcake and a Muffin Top, which is only 3 keys, and a pretty heavily chipped Gravedigger. So I figured that was probably worth it, and given some of the lines that I was looking at where Keen was pressing here, I figured that was worth it for the Cupcake to have an option to heal the Radiator here. In hindsight, I'm not really sure backing Tickles up was great, because this chip on Radiator turns out to be pretty frustrating, because it means I can't position as aggressively forward. In this position, I was looking at the big problem with the way I was calculating is now he's got a creep, which is another source of poison. So both my Cupcake and my Muffin Top will be used. So I was actually thinking about, what if I run Clinico? Because my Radiator is also chipped, so Clinico might actually be useful, which I don't normally use. However, I ended up discarding that. I needed more immediate power here. I was also thinking about, okay, Gravedigger might be able to just run over here and like take a couple panic points to be useful. I looked into that. That wasn't that useful. It turned out those lines did not look very good for me. So I landed on this line that we're about to see here. Gravedigger gets to do damage. My Cupcake heals my Billy and deals 1,000,000 damage to kill the Noxious. Muffin Top heals the Snowball. I'm going to talk about my Snowball placement in a second, because I think I made a mistake there. And here, the fact that my Tickles has lived is pretty helpful for me, because the Tickles, having 750 HP, is not 2-tapped by either one of these, which is useful because it occupies both of them. And then my Radiator gets angry and can actually get in. So in this case, saving the Tickles has meant I buy myself a little bit of extra time. Because I also, like, if we look here, the Gravedigger's at 960. It's going to be at 660. That would normally be killable by 2 shots of Ginsting. But then I have enough of a response with my Radiator and my Tickles that he is just not in good shape. I summoned the Gonzo Bonzo because, again, buffers with Billy and with Radiator are very strong, and that's sort of the composition that I'm playing for. I looked at the Snowball placement, and I looked at, is it better here or is it better here? And I really couldn't tell the difference for a while. And I figured maybe further forward is better, because maybe I can get around and snipe something over there. That turned out I submitted this turn and I realized pretty immediately that Snowball really needed to be back here. And we'll see that in just a second. But really, overall, I was not feeling great about my position here. I'm clearly on the back foot. All of my Phobies are spread out. And Keine is doing a really solid job of making me uncomfortable, which, by the way, is an excellent way to handle Billy, because Billy is fantastic when you have a comfortable position in a controlled state, but when it's not really protected, it's much easier to dive and to kill. He's also done an amazing job protecting his boom here. That boom is the bane of my existence this whole game. I can't dive in and kill it, because then he just kills whatever I dive with. But if I dive to kill something else, the boom just deletes everything. So, in both of these cases, I do feel like I'm in not great shape. What I did realize as soon as I submitted this turn, there's a very important reason why Snowball needs to be here. And that is, it's within Gonzo buff range. Because this Ginsting is at 900 HP. That is killable by a buffed Snowball on Stim, which means this Ginsting can't go here, like anywhere within 2 tiles of the Stim. In giving that position to him, I lose the position of where my Radiator is, so we're about to see this. Fit is another pretty good summon here from Potenzia. It's pretty standard to run that against Billy, so that like it sort of threatens the Billy away from standing here, because the Moffat can just jump in and pull it. Notice what I said about the Ginsting just a second ago. It's able to stand here, and that really bothered me, because now that it's able to stand there, my Radiator can't go here, because Moffat can jump in and pull, and then the Ginsting gets 2 more shots, instead of if it were here and it would get to move up and get 1 shot, and that's actually a really big difference. So, even though I have a pretty decent dive team here, I don't really have that many options. Like, I was looking at lots of different types of calculations here. So for example, one line was Gravedigger can go here and hit. Jar Cannon, I believe, could finish off this shot. Gonzo could move up, and then Billy could get this last shot. So Snowball hits and Billy hits. But even though Billy moves and goes back, and Snowball comes in and hits, I'm getting these 5 keys for the 6 from Snowball and Gravedigger. That doesn't really work. Especially since I've worked so hard to make the Gravedigger be useful. It doesn't really work. Radiator's also chipped. I also only have 1 key left, or 2 keys left if I summon Jar Cannon. This just does not work. Plus, this thing that I talked about before, that creep is gonna poison my Billy. I don't have a healer. My Billy will survive, but it's gonna be chipped and it's gonna be way less useful for the rest of the game. There's actually one line that I thought was pretty funny here, because there's kind of a push-pull move. I examined what happens if I put Radiator here. I do the same thing where I hit, Gravedigger can hit here. I can actually buff my Billy, move over here, and 2-tap the creep, which is pretty good for me. And then Snowball runs in and hits. So this is I'm looking at all these pushes, this is a pretty good, I can get a lot of kills. So I end up with a Radiator, a Gravedigger, that's dead, Billy is here, and Snowball's here. And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of there's a good amount of HP to eat through. That's not so easy to do. Where's the boom gonna go, etc. Well, it turns out Muffet can pull Radiator here. Finnegan can then push it here, and oh no, there's the boom spot. Right, boom, then gets the hit. The kills are very easy to confirm on the Snowball and the Gravedigger. The Gravedigger, I believe, is dead. And that's just really bad for me. So I can't do that either. So once again, I don't have a push. And so then I have to go back to square one and refocus, drop back a little bit, and set up once again. So the way I do this, Billy again needs to avoid the creep. So Billy moves around to the bottom. Make sure we confirm this kill. So the way I ended up doing this, let's actually, I'm gonna go forward a little bit just so that we can see the bottom of the map. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. It was actually surprisingly difficult to set up in a way that because Gravedigger here is at 360 HP, which Murdering does not have its power shot, but it does die to an AoE explosion and a Murdering shot. So it was not so easy to set up in a way that really punished a dive into the Gravedigger. The way I ended up doing it was the only way he can do that is if his Ginsting goes here, hits with an AoE shot, and Murderwing goes like here or maybe here. That means that with half, it gets angry, and the half is just going to go to town along with the Billy. I calculated through these lines and determined he can't go for this push. And as I just sort of sneak previewed, he did. And this was a pretty huge blunder, actually. So for the entire game, Potenzia was playing a truly fantastic game. And I felt on the back foot and not in a very good position. And then this basically gives me the win, as we're about to see. So we can go through the lines here. This push was designed where he wanted to be able to bring his Rambolina around here or here and shove the Billy this way, and then bring the Muffet in and pull the Billy. Plus, he wanted to use the Finnegan and the Boom to get that threat to either shove a Gonzo Bonzo into the abyss or get an explosion. So I could see what he was going for. But those threats are actually not so difficult to deal with. For starters, half can just sit on the panic point. Radiator can move to confirm the kill on the Ginsting along with 2 Billy shots. So this east section is totally secure. Rambolina, for example, now can't get over here. So Billy actually can only get shoved this way. And then in the north, I just have, when I left 3 keys available, I originally had planned on using potentially Clinico to deal with the poison on the Snowball, but I actually just have Jarkin. And note here, I'm using the Snowball to get the Boom. That's really important, so he doesn't have much of a trade back. And I force it because he's already used, Creep has already used his poison here. So if he wants to get that snowball, I believe it already used its poison. I think in the real game he used its poison. So the snowball here was poisoned, and if he wants to actually kill it, he would have to move over and hit, in which case I just kill it back. The lines here, we can go over one line about like how the end of the game, Potenzia resigns here. And the lines are not too complicated, where maybe he brings the Rambolina over here and he brings the Muffet here to pull Radiator. But in all of these instances, Gonzo can just buff Billy right here. 2 Billy hits plus 1 jar hit kills. And if he's used Shove, then I just get a couple pokes on the Rambolina, and if he doesn't use Shove, I get to kill the creep. So that leaves me with a super winning endgame. I actually thought perhaps better for him this turn might have been to just sit kind of pretty in the middle, because this is going to be calm, and I don't really have much in the way of capturing the middle right now. So I actually think he could have like planted something in the middle, maybe his Ginsting, and then a Muffet and a Boom behind it and a Finnegan here. It's not easy to attack this, and he's got 7 keys to work with as well. But anyway, I thought this was a really fun game. I felt on the back foot pretty much the entire game, and there are, I think this goes to show Potenzia played a fantastic game the entire time, but offense is really hard. I had thought I had calculated through a bunch of defense. Turns out it didn't work, but because I'm playing defense, I had a move all the way back there, all the way back here, where I had moved my Radiator to kill this Ginsting, or to kill this Cassowary down there. I didn't see that, but things are available when you have vaults, things from the vault. It was super fun to showcase of how to handle the Billy, especially on a map where Billy is really good, because Billy is fantastic with this stim. And one of the ways you can do that is by tempo play, just like aggression, like make it uncomfortable, make it hard for the Billy to get in because of just action economy issues. I also, taking away from this in the tournament, level 1 Phobies is a lot of fun, especially on a really good map. I thought this was super dynamic, and I'm grateful for a fun game. I'm excited for the update. As I record this, the update is tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. If you made it all the way through, I know this was a very in-depth, 53-minute long and counting video. So thank you for indulging me in my little project. But yeah, I appreciate it. If you're interested in other sort of deep dives, I'd be happy to sort of take a look at it. But yeah, I appreciate it, and maybe I'll make more of these.